They say time heals all wounds. But what if the wound was carved by the people who were supposed to protect you? For 11 years, I carried guilt that never belonged to me until I uncovered the truth. I was only 14 when my life changed forever. Before that, I was just a normal boy. I loved playing soccer after school, reading comic books under the covers with a flashlight, and annoying my little sister, Lily. She was 10 back then, full of energy, with her long brown hair always tied in messy braids. We fought sometimes, but she was my best friend. At least, that's what I thought. The night of the accident still lives in my memory, like a scar that refuses to fade. It was late summer, humid and sticky, and Dad insisted we go for ice cream, even though Mom complained it was too late. I didn't care, I was excited. Ice cream meant family time, laughter, and maybe Dad in a good mood for once. He wasn't the warmest father, but I still tried to make him proud. We all piled into the car. Dad drove. Mom sat in the passenger seat, and Lily and I squeezed into the back. I remember the hum of the engine, the cicadas outside, and Lily giggling at something dumb I said. Then it happened. Flashing lights, the screech of tires, the sickening crunch of metal against metal. I blacked out for a few seconds. When I opened my eyes, my ears were ringing and the world spun around me. Lily was screaming. Blood was everywhere. Dad was shouting. Mom was crying, and the smell of burnt rubber filled my lungs. The next thing I knew, paramedics were pulling Lily out of the wreck. Her leg was twisted unnaturally, and she kept screaming for Mom. I wanted to hold her hand, but Dad yanked me back, his face red with fury. "This is your fault, Ethan," he snapped, his voice shaking with rage. "You distracted me. You couldn't just sit still, could you?" I froze, my mouth open but no words coming out. I had been joking with Lily a few seconds before the crash, but I never touched the wheel. I wasn't the one driving. Still, Dad's words hit me like a hammer. Mom didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. She just buried her face in her hands and sobbed. From that night forward, my life was never the same. Lily spent months in the hospital, recovering from her injuries. She missed school, missed birthdays, missed everything. And every time she looked at me, I saw it. The hate, the blame. I wanted to explain, but how could I? My parents had already told her it was my fault. The whispers never stopped. Whenever relatives visited, Dad would sigh dramatically and say, "If only Ethan had behaved that night." Mom would shake her head and add, "We can't turn back time." At school, I walked around like a ghost. I had friends, but even they noticed a change in me. I stopped laughing, stopped playing, stopped caring. I carried a burden too heavy for a teenager, a guilt that ate me alive every single day. The years rolled by, but the wound never healed. Birthdays, Christmases, family dinners, all poisoned by that unspoken truth. I ruined Lily's life. By the time I turned 18, I was numb. I worked hard to get into college just to escape the suffocating walls of my home. But even then, the guilt followed me. Every time Lily limped past me, her eyes cold and distant, I felt my chest tighten. Every time Dad reminded me of that night, I shrank a little smaller inside. I thought maybe with time they would forgive me, but forgiveness never came. Instead, the blame hardened into something permanent. I was the outcast, the unwanted child, the scar that wouldn't fade. For 11 years, I carried that weight, until the day I stumbled upon the truth. But before that, I need to tell you what it was like living in that house, under the shadow of blame. Because that pain, that loneliness, is what fueled the revenge that came later. Living in that house was like walking through a minefield. Every day, I didn't know when the next explosion would come. Sometimes it was Dad's sharp words. Other times it was Mom's cold silence. And Lily, well, she avoided me like I was a disease. At first, I tried. I really did. I cleaned her room while she was in the hospital, hoping she'd see I cared. I brought her favorite stuffed bunny to her bedside, thinking it might make her smile. But when I placed it gently beside her, she shoved it off the bed. "Get out," she whispered, her voice trembling with anger. "I don't want to see you." That crushed me more than anything. She was my little sister, my partner in mischief, my shadow when we were kids. But the lie had already sunk deep into her heart. She believed I was the reason she couldn't run anymore, the reason she had scars on her leg, the reason her life would never be normal again, and Mom and Dad never corrected her. In fact, they encouraged it. At family dinners, Dad would glare at me whenever Lily winced in pain from her injury. "See what you did," he'd say, shaking his head. "You ruined your sister's life." Mom would sigh, adding softly, "If only you had behaved that night." Every word chipped away at me. At 14, I started believing it. Maybe I was a problem. Maybe if I had just been quiet in the back seat, none of it would have happened. The thought haunted me through school, through exams, through every sleepless night. My grades slipped. Teachers called home, but my parents didn't care. "He's been difficult since the accident," they'd say dismissively. Nobody asked why. Nobody cared to know the truth. By the time I was 16, I stopped trying to please them. I stopped trying to explain. What was the point? They had already decided who I was, the villain of their perfect family. I remember one Christmas vividly. Everyone was gathered around the table, laughing and passing plates of food. Lily had just unwrapped a necklace Dad bought her, and she beamed with joy. I sat quietly, waiting for my turn. My gift was a second-hand sweater, clearly too small, wrapped carelessly. When I tried it on, Dad chuckled. "Doesn't even fit you. Maybe if you weren't such a screw-up, we'd get you something better." The room erupted in awkward laughter, but I saw Lily smirking. I wanted to leave the table. I wanted to scream. But I stayed silent, staring at my plate until my vision blurred. That was my life. Swallowing anger, swallowing sadness, swallowing every part of me that wanted to fight back. At 18, I left for college. It was supposed to be freedom, but the guilt followed me like a shadow. I couldn't connect with people. I couldn't trust anyone. Every time someone smiled at me, I wondered how long it would take for them to turn on me too. I spent nights awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the accident over and over. Was Dad right? Did I really distract him? Did my joke kill my sister's chance at a normal life? I never had an answer, so the guilt stayed. Back home, nothing changed. During visits, Dad still found ways to remind me, "You'll never understand responsibility, Ethan. Look what happened when you tried once." Mom would nod, adding, "Your sister deserved better than what you gave her." And Lily, she barely spoke to me. She'd roll her eyes, brush past me, and if she ever looked me in the eye, it was with coldness. The little girl who used to follow me around the yard was gone. In her place was someone who believed I had ruined her. It wasn't just family. Their words shaped me outside, too. I turned down friendships, pushed away girls who liked me, and lived in constant fear of hurting someone again. Because if I could ruin my sister's life, what else was I capable of? But deep down, a small, stubborn part of me doubted the story. There were flashes of that night I couldn't shake. The way Dad had argued with the police officer. The way he shoved me away before anyone else even spoke. The way his hands trembled, not in pain, but in fear. Still, I buried those thoughts. It was easier to believe I was a problem than to question the people who raised me. Until, years later, life forced me to look closer. It started with a job application. I was 25, tired of working dead-end gigs. One position I applied for required a background check. That meant digging into old public records. That's when the memory of that night resurfaced with a vengeance. I remembered the flashing red and blue lights, the officer scribbling notes, my father's voice sharp and desperate. "This is my son's fault. Write that down." Why would he say that so quickly? Why was he so eager to point the blame at me? The questions clawed at me, louder than they ever had before. For the first time, I felt something stronger than guilt. I felt suspicion. And suspicion was the first crack in the wall of lies that had trapped me for 11 years. Suspicion is a dangerous thing. Once it plants itself in your mind, it grows like a weed, wrapping around every memory until the past doesn't look the same anymore. That's what happened to me. For years, I had carried guilt like a cross on my back. But now, little flashes of memory started cutting through it, making me question everything. The flashing police lights. The officer's serious face. The way Dad's voice cracked when he shouted at me, "This is your fault." He hadn't sounded angry. He had sounded desperate. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't fit. If I had really distracted him, why hadn't the officer questioned me? Why had Mom explained it to me calmly later, instead of letting the blame crush me? Why did Dad leap so quickly to blame a 14-year-old boy? I couldn't let it go. Not this time. When I got the email about the background check, it mentioned pulling up public records, including police reports if necessary. That triggered something in me. I knew the accident had been officially recorded. There had been police, paramedics, paperwork. Somewhere, the truth was written down. So I went digging. It wasn't easy. I had to file a formal request through the local department's online portal. I almost gave up halfway, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. But something inside me kept pushing. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was a last shred of hope that I hadn't ruined my sister's life after all. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. I remember staring at it for a long time, my hands trembling. My name and address printed neatly on the front. The return label from the police department. This was it. The truth, sealed in manila. I tore it open and unfolded the papers. My eyes scanned the first page, and my heart began to pound. Case report, vehicular collision. Driver, Thomas Gray. Blood alcohol content, 0.14. I froze. My father's name. Not mine. Not Mom's. Not distracted by passenger. Just drunk driving. My chest tightened as I read further. The report described how Dad had failed to stop at a red light. The other driver swerved, but the collision was unavoidable. The officer on scene recorded Dad as agitated, slurring speech, with strong odor of alcohol. My hands shook so hard the paper crinkled. I read the words again and again, hoping I was mistaken. But there it was in black and white. Dad had been drunk. Dad had caused the accident. Not me. Not my stupid joke. Not my restless teenage energy. Him. For 11 years, I had carried his crime on my shoulders. For 11 years, he had looked me in the eye and told me I ruined Lily's life, knowing all along that it was his fault. I dropped the papers on the floor and stumbled back, gasping for air. The walls seemed to close in around me, my vision blurred with tears I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't the villain. I was the scapegoat. The betrayal hit me harder than the accident itself ever had. I thought of every birthday I spent in silence, every Christmas where I sat ignored, every cruel word that broke me a little more. All of it. Because Dad didn't want to face the truth about himself. Mom knew. She had to. She was in the car. She must have smelled the alcohol, must have heard the officer. And yet she chose to stay silent. She chose to let me drown under guilt that wasn't mine. And Lily, my poor sister, she had grown up hating me because of their lies. She believed her brother had destroyed her future, when the real monster was sitting at the head of the dinner table every night. My hands curled into fists. I had wasted more than a decade of my life in shame, and for what? To protect him? To keep his reputation clean? No, not anymore. I gathered the papers and made copies. I wasn't going to confront him in secret. No yelling match in the living room. No whisper confessions. No, if he had ruined my life publicly, then I would ruin his the same way. I waited, patiently. It didn't take long for the perfect moment to come. Lily's birthday was in 2 weeks. She was turning 21, and Mom was planning a big dinner at the house. Extended family, neighbors, old friends, all invited to celebrate her. And that was where I would end it. For the first time in 11 years, I felt light. The guilt that chained me for so long had shattered into rage, into something sharp and purposeful. My father thought he had buried the truth forever, but I was about to dig it up and bury him with it. The 2 weeks leading up to Lily's birthday felt like the calm before a storm. On the surface, life carried on as usual. I went to work, grabbed groceries, watched TV in my apartment. But inside I was burning. Every heartbeat pulsed with rage and anticipation. I kept the police report in a folder on my desk. Every night I opened it, ran my eyes over those words, blood alcohol content, 0.14. Every time I read them, my chest tightened with a mix of relief and fury. I wasn't the one who ruined Lily's life, but my father had stolen mine. I thought about confronting him privately, maybe cornering him in the kitchen, throwing the papers in his face. But no, that would be too easy for him. He would deny it, twist it, convince Mom to cover for him again. No one would believe me. That's what he'd count on. So I planned carefully. First, I made copies of the report. One for me, one hidden in my car, and several sealed in envelopes just in case he tried to destroy them. I wasn't just going to accuse him. I was going to expose him in front of everyone who mattered to him. The day of Lily's birthday arrived. Mom had decorated the house with streamers and balloons, like she always did. The dining table was packed with food, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, cake with pink frosting. Laughter filled the air as neighbors and family friends arrived, handing Lily gifts wrapped in shiny paper. I stood in the corner, watching. Lily looked beautiful that night. She wore a deep blue dress. Her hair curled softly around her shoulders. She still walked with a slight limp, but she carried herself with confidence. I wish things had been different between us, that we could have been close again. But the truth had poisoned us long ago. Dad was at the head of the table, beer in hand, cracking jokes like he hadn't destroyed all of us. People laughed at his stories, clapped him on the back, called him a strong man for holding the family together after the accident. My stomach churned at every word. I waited until after dinner, when everyone gathered in the living room for cake. Lily sat in the center, smiling as people sang, "Happy Birthday." Dad stood proudly beside her, his arm draped around her shoulders like he was some kind of hero. That was my moment. I stepped forward, holding a small box in my hands. "I have a gift, too," I said, my voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. Lily's smile faltered. Dad narrowed his eyes. I placed the box on the table in front of Lily. "This isn't the kind of gift you can wear or play with," I continued. "It's something more important. The truth." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan," he said sharply, "this isn't the time." "No, Dad." I cut him off, my voice steady. "It's long past time." I opened the box and pulled out the neatly folded police report. My hands didn't shake. I had imagined this moment too many times. I turned to the guests, my gaze sweeping over their curious faces. "For 11 years, I said, "I was blamed for the accident that hurt Lily. Everyone here knows the story. You've heard my father tell it, that I distracted him, that it was my fault. And for 11 years, I carried that guilt." Gasps echoed. Lily frowned, glancing at Dad, confusion flickering in her eyes. "But here's the real story," I continued, unfolding the paper. "According to the official police report, my father was driving drunk. His blood alcohol level was almost twice the legal limit. He ran a red light. That's why we crashed. Not because of me. Not because of anything I did." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. I walked closer to Lily and handed her the report. Her hands trembled as she took it, scanning the words. Her lips parted in shock. "Dad, is this true?" she whispered. Dad's face turned red, his jaw clenched. "Don't listen to him," he barked. "He's twisting things." It's a police report, Dad." I snapped, my voice rising for the first time. "This isn't my opinion. This isn't a memory. This is the truth you buried to save yourself." Mom's face drained of color. She reached for Dad's arm, but he pulled away, sputtering. The guests stared, whispers growing louder. Some looked disgusted. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Lily stood up, her eyes wide with betrayal. "You told me it was Ethan's fault," she said, her voice breaking. "You let me hate him all these years when it was you?" Dad opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The proud, loud man who controlled every room now stood exposed, naked in his shame. Relatives began muttering, some even stepping away from him. Neighbors avoided his eyes. The man who had lived off his reputation, who had built his life on a lie, was crumbling right there in his own living room. I felt a rush of satisfaction. Not joy, not happiness. Just justice. For once, the truth was louder than his lies. The room felt frozen in time. The only sound was the soft crackle of candles burning on Lily's cake. Nobody sang anymore. Nobody laughed. All eyes were on my father. Lily clutched the police report, her hands shaking, her eyes wet. "You lied to me," she whispered. "You let me hate my brother for something you did." Her voice cracked, and the pain in it sliced through me. 11 years of resentment, 11 years of cold glares, 11 years of silence, all built on a lie. Dad tried to speak, his voice hoarse. "I did it for you, Lily. I didn't want you to see me as weak. I didn't want to lose my family." "You already lost it," she said coldly, stepping away from him. "The moment you decided to ruin Ethan's life, instead of owning your mistake." Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. We thought it was for the best. We thought if we shifted the blame." "Blame your own son?" I cut her off, my voice sharp. "You thought destroying me was for the best? You let me believe I was a monster. You let your daughter believe her brother was her enemy. For what? To protect him?" The weight of my words hung heavy in the air. Some of the guests quietly gathered their coats. A few muttered under their breath about how disgusting it all was. One elderly aunt shook her head and whispered, "Shameful, absolutely shameful." Dad's face crumpled as the whispers turned into open judgment. The man who once commanded respect now stood exposed as a coward. Lily turned to me then, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," she said. "I hated you for so long. I thought you didn't care. I thought you destroyed my life." Her voice broke. "But it wasn't you." For a moment, I wanted to forgive her, to hug her and tell her it was all okay. But the truth was, it wasn't. The damage had been done. 11 years of my life were gone, stolen by lies. "I know," I said softly, "but we can't get those years back." Her shoulders slumped, and she nodded, understanding the distance that would remain between us, no matter how much truth had come to light. As for Dad, he sat down heavily, his head in his hands. "I made a mistake," he muttered, his voice barely audible. I didn't want to lose everything." "You didn't just make a mistake," I said, my voice low but firm. "You made a choice, and now you live with the consequences." Silence followed. The guests slowly began to leave, their eyes filled with disgust and pity, not for me, but for him. When the house finally emptied, I stood near the door, watching my parents crumble in their own shame. Mom tried to approach me, her voice soft. "Nathan, please, you have to understand." "No," I said, cutting her off. "I don't have to understand anything. You had 11 years to tell me the truth, 11 years to protect me. Instead, you chose to protect him." Her face fell, and she stepped back. I turned to Lily one last time. "I don't hate you, but I can't stay here anymore. Not with them. Not after everything." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "I get it." I walked out of that house with my head high. For the first time in 11 years, I felt free. The guilt that had weighed me down was gone, replaced by something sharper, justice. My revenge wasn't loud. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I didn't hurt them physically. I simply exposed the truth. And that was enough to destroy the empire of lies they had built. As I drove away, I thought about what had been taken from me. My childhood, my sister's love, my self-worth. I couldn't get those back. But I could build a new life, one that wasn't chained to their lies. And that was the sweetest revenge of all. If I were in this situation, here's what I would have done. I would have gathered proof, just like Ethan did. But instead of waiting 11 years, I would have gone straight to the truth much earlier. Lies can only live in the dark. Once you shine a light on them, they collapse. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.